रेडी? कुछ वर्ड लिखेंगे. what do you, what did, what happened, what can be, what could be, what could be said, what could be done, what do you mean, what are the, what do they, what has been, what had been, what was required, what is required, what was the, what would be, what is the, what is it, what is the matter, what is the position, what was the matter, what will be, what are you, what may be, what might be, what have you. आउटलाइन देख लेंगे एक बार इनकी. व्हाट लाइन से ऊपर लिखते हो क्वेश्चन मार्क की तरह. ये विद, ये वैन, ये व्हाट और यू वुड. व्हाट के साथ में व्हाट डू यू. अगर आता है इसमें व्हाट डिड यू तो हाफ कर देंगे इसको. व्हाट हैपेंड, ये तो व्हाट में पीएन को हाफ करके लगा दूं, या फिर आप व्हाट हैपेंड पूरा भी बना सकते हो पीएन को हाफ करके. व्हाट कैन बी, व्हाट कुड बी, साइज छोटा कर देना कुड का. व्हाट कुड बी सेड, SOD. What could be done, what do you mean, what are the, what do they, what has been, what had been. या आप पूरा भी बना सकते हो. What are required, sorry, what was required. What are required, what is required, what was the, what would be, what is the, what is it, what is the matter, MG doubling, what is the position, what was the matter, MG doubling, what will be, what are you, what may be, what might be. आई लगा देना, क्लियरिटी रहती है, पढ़ने में आसानी होती है माइट के केस में. what have you, लिखो फिर से. what do you, what did you, what happened, what can be, what could be, what could be said, what could be done, what do you mean, what are the, what do they, what has been, what had been, what was required, what is required, what was the, what would be, what is the, what is it, what is the matter, what is the position, what was the matter, what will be, what are you, what may be, what might be, what have you. डिक्टेशन लिखेंगे पहले 100 पे. डिक्टेशन आपको मिलेगी सेम URL के अंदर, cp program MMS में .steno 18.in में SSC C grade test 58 YouTube @100 पे होगी और दूसरी होगी @80 पे. दोनों विद कॉमा टाइप करनी है. तीसरा कंटेंट में सीन कंटेंट बोलूंगा आपको. रेडी? स्टार्ट इट. start. Sir, this bill was introduced in the House by the then Labour Minister Sri K.V. Raghunathan Reddy. I was also present at that time in the House. After a period of 9 long years, this bill has now come from the cold storage. It shows how powerful the plantation lobby in the country is. Even though after so much of time this bill has now been brought, I support this bill. In the name of a more comprehensive measure, I do not agree that this bill should be postponed or that it should be again referred to a joint committee. Some such proposal was there. I do not agree to that, though it is not adequate and some improvement from the point of view of workers is needed. I do not agree that we should postpone passing it. For example, it has been suggested that the acreage limit should be brought down to 5 hectares to cover more plantations. In the south, especially in Kerala, Karnataka and other southern states, many plantations are not covered by this bill. I would request the minister to carefully examine this thing. In North India and some other places, tea plantation is on a large scale. But in the case of rubber, cardamom and coffee, it is 5 hectares. This is on the high side. I request the Honorable Minister to reduce the acreage limit to 2.5 hectares for coffee and rubber and cardamom. Our friend was talking about socialism, socialist society, democratic socialism, and so many other things. I earnestly request him to consider my suggestion, and that is whether the government is prepared to nationalize the tea industry. Sir, some 8 years ago in the Kerala Assembly, all the parties, including Congress Party, unanimously recommended to the central government for the takeover of the tea industry. In Kerala, tea plantation is owned by British monopolies. Even in the Assam Assembly, all the parties unanimously passed a resolution suggesting takeover of this industry. Are you prepared to take over this industry, especially this tea industry? I pose this question to owned by foreign monopolies and they are exploiting the workers. The situation in the tea industry is deteriorating. Are you prepared to nationalize it when you talk of socialism? Unless this is nationalized, you cannot meet the demands of the workers. Sir, how unfortunate for this country, predominantly agricultural, that the meaning of plantations in this bill has been stretched to include coconut gardens, apple, pineapple, cashew nuts and banana plantation farms. I am glad that wisdom has dawned on the government not to accept these recommendations of the committee. If I were an anarchist or a member who wished ill of this government, I would have pleaded with the government to stretch the meaning of plantations to cover all agricultural lands in the country and attract the provisions of this bill. Then we could have seen the beginning of convulsions and revolutions in this country as the debt-ridden farmers being unable to fulfill the provisions of this bill, would have started filling up jails for violations of its provisions. Sir, I would take this opportunity to appeal to the Prime Minister to treat agriculture as an industry and treat agriculturists like the urban citizens and treat the farm holdings in the same way as they treat the factories and industries. The government should start finding out the invidious and discriminatory laws passed in the country since independence adversely affecting the farming community and review those laws if they want to ensure integrated development of the country. Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, you know the undivided Congress, the Indian National Congress, fought for plantation labor and also for the rights and privileges of the peasantry. It was Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and Mahatma Gandhi in the Chori Chora movement who brought the peasantry to the forefront to the leadership of the Indian National Congress. As successors of those great leaders in that organization, it is high time the Congress did their best for the plantation labor as well as the unorganized peasantry in that area. Even in Mexico, in Algeria, in Russia, or in Cuba, or in other countries, it was the labor, the plantation labor, who took the revolution to its final goal. Here in this country, we do not want to see another bloodbath. We do not want to see that they take up arms against government or against employers. As people's representatives and as government of the people, we must do our best to solve their problems, whatever their grievances are, whatever their difficulties are, instead of allowing anybody to take advantage of their poverty and their difficulties. I know what goes on with plantation labor. I can give instances of different plantations. I come from West Bengal, where tea plantation is a very big factor, and I know how plantation labor are still being exploited. Housing facility near the plantations is a must for them under the Act. Sir, the resolution itself is very badly drafted, but it draws attention to one of the most pressing problems of this country. Full employment is an objective of every kind of economy in this world, whether capitalist, socialist, communist, or mixed economy. Therefore, it is also one of our objectives, but then we are not able to find out whether we are proceeding on the road of greater employment or greater unemployment. I am afraid that thinking on this matter is today so confused and contradictory that unless we can have a rational comprehension of the whole problem, we are not likely to make any headway. Therefore, I want to define how we should approach this problem. First of all, this is not a single problem, but two different and distinct problems. We should not confuse total unemployment with partial employment or underemployment. These are two different things that have to be dealt with in entirely different fashions, but unfortunately, when we speak of 15 or 19 million unemployed, nobody knows how many of these are really totally unemployed and how many are suffering from seasonal or partial unemployment. Total unemployment is an urban phenomenon. It is only in cities and towns, you have people who have to work whatsoever. 100 की स्पीड है, फ्लक्चुएशंस लगभग 7-8 वर्ड तक ऊपर अप साइड में है। टाइप करना है तो ये आपको मिलेगा SSC C D ग्रेड 58 टेस्ट के नाम से, इसी URL के अंदर लॉगिन करने के बाद में 100 पे 80 पे लिखेंगे। आप ये गेट ड्रैग कर दो, गेट लगा दो। स्टार्टेड। Start. Sir, I consider it a privilege to place this recommendation of the Lok Sabha before the honorable members of this House. The motion for reference of the Constitution Amendment Bill was adopted almost unanimously by the Lok Sabha. So this recommendation has the backing of more than 97% of the members of the Lok Sabha. The motion for reference of this bill, which is of more than ordinary importance, was made by the Prime Minister himself. He dealt with this subject in his own lucid and inimitable way in his opening and concluding speeches. I do not think it is necessary for me to go into matters of detail. Here, even ordinarily, at this stage, we would be concerned only with the broad principles of the bill. It has already been discussed at great length in the other house. I only hope that it will be viewed in a similar spirit of understanding and sympathy by the honorable members of the Rajya Sabha. They are perhaps reputed for greater sobriety and wisdom. Sir, I fully realize that the amendment of the Constitution stands entirely on a different footing from any alteration of the municipal or domestic laws of administration. Here, we are concerned with matters of a basic and vital character, and it is necessary to weigh every proposition dispassionately in an objective manner so that our decisions may be sound. Our Constitution was framed by the choicest of the chosen in our land. So, it has to be treated with tenderness, with profound respect, and so far as possible, it should not be disturbed except for very adequate and even for only compelling reasons. I feel that the amending bill satisfies these tests, and that is why I am making this motion. Our Constitution enshrines the main purpose and objective of our national policy. Our society is to be based on the twin pillars of social and economic justice. The preamble embodies the main objective for which the Parliament is designed and intended to function. It has, besides the preamble, the directive principles which, in a way, chalk out the road which will lead to the goal which has been defined in the Constitution. Still in greater detail, we have also certain fundamental rights which are equally entitled to every consideration and regard. Besides, the Constitution provides for an independent judiciary and the Supreme Court. The function of the Parliament is the most important. It has an unlimited scope and it can, if it so chooses and if circumstances so require, make far-reaching changes in the Constitution. The Parliament alone is capable of making a comprehensive and all-round survey of things and events, and after assessing them in their proper value and aspect, it alone is in a position to decide authoritatively as to what steps should be taken to give effect to the central purpose for which it exists. The events of the last few years, including the decisions taken by the Parliament, by the legislatures in other places, and those by the Supreme Court, have made it imperative that a bill of this type should be placed before the Parliament. The Supreme Court deserves every respect. Its decisions have to be carried out, but according to the formal rules governing the process and the procedure of a court, its orbit is circumscribed. Sometimes, perhaps, it is not expected even to look at the debates that are held in Parliament, or even at the preamble or the directive principles. According to the formal rules of interpretation, it has to construe the articles that come before it. It is from the very nature of its constitutional composition and the method of work prescribed for it, limited to the wording of the clauses which come under review before it. So, it takes its decisions, and those decisions have to be carried out by us. Occasions, however, are bound to arise and have arisen when the decisions of the Supreme Court have not been in conformity with the declared verdict of the legislatures in the land. It is embracing to the Supreme Court that it should have to declare the laws passed by Parliament ultra vires. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill introduced by Sri Thomas is a step towards fulfilling those promises and assurances which were given to the people of India by our great leaders, great freedom fighters, Mahatma Gandhi and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. I think that this is the need of the hour. to my mind. First of all, the subject regarding employment and right to work should be included in chapter 3 instead of chapter 4 of the Constitution, so that the government is held responsible for this. In the communist countries and even in non-communist countries, the unemployed are given some sort of doles to enable them to sustain themselves in a particular standard of living. Apart from all communist countries, social security system prevails in Britain, Canada and America, where the unemployed are helped at the time of unemployment. 80 की स्पीड है, फ्लैक्चुएशंस 7-8 वर्ड तक का ऊपर तक अपसाइड में है, और ये एसएससी सी एंड डी ग्रेड टेस्ट नंबर 58-80 पे मिलेगा आपको. सीन कंटेंट लिखेंगे. सीन कंटेंट की चॉइस आपकी विद कोमा नो कोमा दोनों में से कोई भी टाइप कर सकते हो. रेडी? Start it. Sir, the Essential Commodities Act was passed 5 years ago, and when the minister yesterday came with an amending bill, we expected that he would give us a brief report on the working of this measure for the last few years. But unfortunately, we are kept in the dark in regard to the exact working of the Act and the nature of the difficulties the minister is facing. Sir, as far as I know, many of the provisions of this enactment have been observed more in violation by his agents at the state level. The food minister may be very earnest, may be very able, and may be very anxious to see that the various provisions of the Act are implemented in the most effective manner at the state level, but unfortunately, his agents at the state level are not equally enthusiastic or equally anxious to observe the provisions of this enactment. The most important objectives of this enactment are to control the supply and distribution of commodities and to maintain a stable price level. In regard to both these aspects, I am afraid that the government has failed to realize the objectives in view. Some time passed when there was scarcity of food grains. Attempts were made to make procurement from certain wholesale merchants and from rice mills. In my own state, I know of many instances of such procurement where, after making known that certain things had to be done and certain steps had to be taken by the merchant community, nothing was done later on by the government when they found that these very orders of the government were violated. As a result of the violations, there was a consequent rise in the prices of food grains. In respect of other commodities like iron and steel, paper, etc., we see a lot of speculative activities, but the provisions of the Act have not been brought to bear on them. Perhaps no case of prosecution was launched against those people who contravened the various provisions of the Act. We are interested to know in how many cases the government have taken steps to prosecute individuals who have violated the various sections of the Act. The minister said that the powers under the Act were not adequate. We sympathize with the food minister, but I want to know what action has been taken in this regard by the various state governments. In regard to the amending provision, I want to know from the minister what would be his difficulty, even if minor offences are taken to courts of law. For instance, the Motor Vehicles Act deals with various offences, both major and minor, and various minor offences under the Act are taken to courts and people are prosecuted. What is the difficulty in taking these cases of a minor nature to courts of law? There, the people will have some safety that they will get a hearing, and if the offences are really offences, then they would be prosecuted. Otherwise, they will be acquitted. Here the minister says that there should be a security deposit if there is a violation of a particular provision of the enactment, then the executive authority will have the power either to confiscate a part of the amount or the whole of the amount. We are clothing the executive authority with more powers. I do not grudge giving powers to the executive authority, provided they are used properly and effectively and in a most fair manner. But unfortunately, there have been discriminations apart from the ineffectiveness of the various provisions. Wherever these provisions were used, there had been discriminatory use of these provisions against a few or in favor of a few. Normally, when officers are clothed with more powers, there is large scope for corruption. I feel that it would be desirable to avoid such malpractices, and it would be desirable, I think that even for minor offenses, the parties should have a chance to defend their actions. I do not think that this problem of dealing with minor offenses will become complex or complicated in any way if we take them to courts of law. I want a reply from the minister in what way he is suffering from a handicap in dealing with minor offenses or offenses of a technical nature. The honorable member made the point that even if this thing was acceptable to the House, he did not know what amount would be demanded as security. So the minister should tell us what amount is normally expected from a licensee in all cases and what the offenses are which are of a technical or minor nature which he has in view. We are not told which are major offenses and which are minor offenses. Clarifications on these points are necessary. I wish that the act which came into effect long ago was implemented properly. I know that the minister here is very earnest in implementing it, but his colleagues at the state level and at the central level are disappointing him. 80 की स्पीड है और ये आपको सीन कंटेंट केसी नंबर 4 से बोला गया है. ये आप विद कोमा और नो कोमा में से कोई भी टाइप कर सकते हो, तुम्हारी चॉइस है. दोनों फाइल आपको मिल जाएगी इसके अंदर. चार नंबर केसी का 4 नंबर है.